Yeah, everybody, welcome and Waddles up to another edition of Across the Pitch with myself, Dave Miller, and my guy, Mike Barrera, just there. Obviously, it's not been as busy of a week for the Union, but I mean, it's been a very positive one. I think we can all agree on that. In the playoffs, that's all up. A guaranteed home game at Subaru Park in the first round. It just depends where they're ranked, and we'll dive right into the game against NYCFC this weekend later on in the show. But obviously, Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing well. We're talking about this final few games of the season, which means the final few episodes of Across the Pitch, and it gets nostalgic thinking about how well the season has gone, considering all the ups and downs. So I'm feeling positive. We got a tough match ahead. We got a good match to look back on, and we have some regular season awards that we're going to get down to tonight. So a lot to
Yeah.
talk about. I'm really excited to start the show.
Absolutely, man. It's gonna be a fun show. Hopefully, a bit more light-hearted than usual. We're not going to be as aggressive. I think obviously with it being a positive week for the Union, there's not as much to you know be negative about. Not carry the Philadelphia reputation of Negadelphia. We're very positive this week. Obviously, going straight into the news and notes. Obviously, we just met, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Union
Yes.
have clinched a playoff spot and a home game. So I mean, obviously, we saw in the playoffs last time out, it didn't mean jack. They got beat by New England, who obviously have the home advantage throughout this playoff run. But again, if the Union can clinch second place um,
Yeah.
this weekend, they could. There's a chance that the playoffs could run through them if New England do what the Union did last year and lose their first game out the bat. There's a chance that the playoffs could run through Philadelphia. So there's always that big incentive for trying to finish second. Again, they're currently in second spot as we after the huge win against FC Cincinnati. They're obviously now what's called obviously a second place, and Nashville
Mhm.
obviously got to face a good New York Red Bulls team who are obviously trying to fight. Just end the season strongly. So again, it's going to be a difficult task for Nashville. It's going to be an even more difficult task for the Union as they go to NYCFC, who are no mugs, and we'll obviously speak about the game later. Sorry, but again, some more positive news as well. Daniel Garsdag probably had his best week as a Union player. He made the team of the week after scoring a couple of goals and getting a couple of assists as well. I mean, obviously, the goal he scored against FC Cincinnati, we'll look at that
Mhm.
in a little bit. It was a bit of a fluke. Obviously, he got a bit lucky, but could have been. It may have been absolute genius, but who knows? But he did well to get a little flick on the on the end of Olivier Mbazo's shot and headed home. So again, I mean, that's the sort of luck perhaps he's been waiting for. But I think obviously, question for you, Mike, is has he finally found his feet in this Union team in the MLS in America?
Yeah, I think he put it, pretty nicely himself and explained it well. This game in the MLS is faster than what he's used to in Hungary, and it took some time, it took some development, it took some ups and downs for sure that we've seen from Gazdag. But I know we heard Danny Higginbotham talk about it on the broadcast as well. He seems to have found his place with this roster. He seems to be more comfortable. He seems to be doing the playmaking things we expected from him uh, when we signed him. So I think just looking into the playoffs in general, having Daniel Gazdag hitting his stride at the right time, finding his way on the team is massive for a club who's had their issues with scoring goals over the course of the year. So, whether I credit Curtin, whether I credit the training staff or Daniel or his teammates, whatever it's been done is worked, and I'm
Yeah.
really excited to see him moving forward.
And I think again, I think the use of the Christmas tree, as heavily slated as it was, obviously earlier on in the season, it has. I think it's helped unlock Gazdag's sort of playmaking abilities and what he can do on the sort of attacking end of the field in terms of having more space on the ball, having more players to feed off, having players to give the ball to. And I think we've seen that obviously with Montero coming back and Montero hitting form. We've obviously seen those two connect well, obviously with Casper just ahead of them, and that little narrow front three has worked really well. They've been able to get into tight pockets of spaces and have been able to create more opportunities. They've been able to work off each other and find little holes and find space inside the penalty area to create chances to have opportunities at goal. And that's something we've seen from Gazdag over the last few games. He's obviously working. He's getting into more progressive positions to actually have attempts at goal, to actually shoot, get inside the box. Whereas perhaps as we've seen in the past, he's perhaps been a bit reluctant to be as aggressive on the ball, be as aggressive breaking off into the penalty area. So again, I think that's obviously a great sign to see that he's hitting that stride now, as opposed to later down the line in the season and obviously waiting for it next season.
And can I interrupt you for 1 second with some more recent news and notes? So I just saw on Twitter that just came out 7:24 p.m. today. The U20 roster came out, and we have 3 Union players on the U20 roster. We have Paxton
really?
Aronson, Jack McGlynn, and Quinn Sullivan have
All
made the
three have made
U20
the American
US.
Under-20 team.
That's correct. That's what I'm
That's
seeing right
awesome.
here on Twitter. So
That's
some more
awesome.
news and notes to share with our fans.
Hang on,
Speaking
wait,
of fans, Dave, yeah, you can go ahead and look it up. Speaking of fans, we have one of our across the pitch and a fellow Union fan as well, Jose Nunez, joining the show with us today, and we're going to bring him on in just a moment as well. But we just brought that news up to the fans today. What do you think of that, Dave, for those 3 young homegrown players?
I think it's awesome. I think it's absolutely awesome the fact they're actually going to be playing for the American sort of youth national team. It's a great experience. It's going to be a great experience for them. Hopefully, something they'll be doing a lot in the future for the men's team.
Mm-hmm.
But my only worry now is, hang on, let me just search up quickly.
Well, you know what?
God.
While you're
Thank God, that's fine. I was just searching up basically when the playoffs and the international break was, because if they'd synced up, I was like, oh no, we're down those 3, we're down Blake and all that.
We've already been missing enough players this season. We don't
almost
need more.
Almost had a heart attack live on air. I was like, oh God, no.
Anyway, before we break down the players and the games, why don't we get our sponsors over with first? Because I want to bring on Jose, and I don't want to interrupt him while he's on with us. So, Dave, I'll put him on the screen, and you read them off for us, if you could, please. Our first up,
Sure,
I'll just take. You got it. You want me to do it, or you got it? I know. It's fun.
If you want to go for it, you go for it.
I'll take the lead. I'll take the lead. I know everybody's so excited for this part of the show. So we have Manscaped, 20% off plus free shipping with the code AATBirds at Manscaped.com. We have Jam. They use a new software platform that uses an arbitrage calculator, so you never miss it again. And it's a great way to make sure you never lose any money too. So arbitrage calculator with OddsJam, oddsjam.com right there via AAT Birds. And then we have our statement game. Statementgames.com is a new way to fantasy sports entertainment. You can win gift cards and prizes. It's free to sign up. Seriously, it's free, no charge. Please today. And last but not least, we have La Terrain, which is our newest sponsor. They get 10% off at the for 10% off discount at the checkout, rather, if you use the code AATBirds, LaTerrain.com for some nice watches before the holiday season. And of course, we have our own network shop, aatsportsnetwork.com/shop for gear. We have Across the Pitch gear, Burning Bridges, which is hosted by a former NFL player. We have our weekly show. We have our Chips and Dish show. So there's so much stuff to look at. All different kinds of cool shirts, hoodies, everything else under the sun. And, that covers our sponsors. So we're going to get right into the Cincinnati review. But first, I mentioned I'm going to to join us. Bring it to him right now. Hey, Jose. How you doing, man?
What's going on, guys? It's a pleasure to be here. First time, obviously, listener and often commenting with too many caps, with caps lock on at all times. I get fired up, but I'm so excited to be here and be talking Union with both of you.
Awesome. We love the passion. We love that you obviously continue to watch the show every week, and we appreciate your fandom of us. I think, again, it's still quite it's still quite incredible to think that people are actually willing to sit there and listen to me and Mike babble on about the Union 8 p.m. Eastern every single week. So it's awesome. Thank you so much for your support. And obviously we're going to carry on doing what we do for people like you. Obviously, Jose, welcome onto the show. First time on here. Hopefully many more in the future. Obviously, I think the first question here is, how did you become a Union supporter? How did you get to following the Union?
Gosh, maybe I'm dating myself in a way here, but the Union had just opened up their season at Lincoln Financial Field right before I graduated high school. So being somewhat local to the area in Berks County, maybe an hour and a half away from Philadelphia, but then Chester, made it super easy to have a team. Now, I must admit that technically my nationality and my alliances should be with the DC United due to being Bolivian. And of course, Jaime Moreno and Marco Echeverri, who are legends of DC United, are of the nation I was born at in Bolivia. But you just got to root for the Philadelphia team being in PA, right? I could easily choose DC, but absolutely fell in love with the Union. And frankly, over 10 plus years now, how quickly they've expanded in the way that they operate, and really the way that they play has been a lot of fun, and become a season ticket holder too. So it's been a blast.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I became a Union fan, I think, probably around 2012, I want to say. So not too long after you. I kind of took a couple years for me to get into it. But it was funny. I was on Facebook today. I looked at a post from, I think, 2017, where it was like, oh, man, the Union are struggling right now. They're not hitting their stride. It's just funny to see how much has changed over the last, 10 years. We've gone from being a mediocre squad, bottom of the standings, really not having any promise. And next thing you know, we're making the playoffs every year. We won the Supporter Shield. Jose, would you agree it's been like a roller coaster ride to be a Union fan of even the past like 5 years alone?
Oh my gosh, even the last 5 years, absolutely. And I think there's some words that are kind of like ingrained in my brain of just like fear and PTSD in a way of like hearing Freddie Adu. If you know, right? Freddie Adu,
Yeah.
Mondragon, some other Emboli, some random
Emboli,
names that the Union have spent an incredible amount of money and frankly have not panned out. Though I think when we talk later on the podcast about the awards for the season, I think it really comes true of just how far they've come with their scouting and with their signings and their signature. I think. Gosh, they're the way to best describe them is just how frugal they are, but just how great they are at finding gems that are just shining so bright compared to what other teams are doing. I'm just really excited to be here, frankly.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the gems and the the bright stars, and that's a great segue into the Cincinnati review that which we're about to talk about now. The Sixers had their trust the process, and the Union, in a way, had their own trust the process. You had to give time to pass to get these young prospects like Brendan Aronson, Mark McKenzie. And now you're seeing it again with even more promising prospects. We had, Jack McGlynn and Paxton Aronson being real contributors against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
A huge win for us on Halloween at home. You were at the stadium, I believe, sitting in the river end. Tell us your thoughts now. It's been about a week or so since the match happened.
Exciting, very fun. I think kind of novel, right, to be on Halloween night at a soccer game in the middle of the night, though I must admit probably not the greatest decision for attendance, albeit very fun. But to your point of Brendan and these up and coming youth system products, people are noticing, right? Obviously there are Aronson jerseys from the older brother, but you started to see some Paxton jerseys at the river end. You're also starting to see some McGlynn jerseys at the river end, some Sullivan jerseys. So blood's in the water. The Union are striking where it makes sense and where it's true to our hearts here with seeing the youth come through. But overall, just an incredible game, though I don't think we need we should not, lose the plot here and take a step back and realize that was a team that only had 4 wins or has had only 4 wins the entire season. It was great to see Harris Medujanin. He got a section 141 had a beautiful banner saying "Thank you so much for everything you did" type of thing. So not even a River End banner, but just again, it's a team that's only had 4 wins, and it was great. And maybe this is what the Union needed to get the engine revving a little bit leading into the playoffs. Just a nice, easy, let's figure out the formation, let's figure out who we are, let's go into the playoffs feeling good. Though, pretty tough game coming up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
Say,
what were your thoughts on the game? Mm-hmm.
I think that was probably the most comfortable game the Union will have played all season. I don't think Cincinnati actually caused them any issues. I think that as soon as the Union got the first, I think me and Mike were speaking to each other and was like, it's just a matter of time until they scored the second. I don't actually like you watch other games, just sort of worried, like, oh no, we know how bad they can be defensively at the back, like in terms of set pieces. It's just a matter of time until this team has a chance. And do they cock it up? Do they mess it up? But it just wasn't like that. It just wasn't like that on Sunday night. It was just so comfortable from minute 1 to minute 90. I think Cincinnati had like 4 shots
Yeah.
and didn't even test Andre Blake. I think Andre Blake may as well have just sat there and just pulled up a chair and a table and had his dinner and just sat there and watched them. That's how comfortable it was for him. And again, that comes to huge credit from the defense and how great they have been over the course of the season. And that sort of all came together to shut out a team, that had caused them issues a few weeks beforehand in Cincinnati.
Yeah. Yeah, and you see too as well the contributing on the goal scoring from not just from Casper, not just from the forwards. You had well, for what we thought Mbaizo scored, he obviously didn't end up being, tipped in by Gaza, but I'm going to give him credit for the goal. I mean, he sets it up for the goal. It's great. Once you saw that kind of go in, you're like, well, maybe this will be our night to just have an easy win because, Olivier has been knocking on the door on and off all season. To finally see him break through kind of gave this, you could see this team get an extra boost of confidence after that goal goes in. Again, obviously credit to Daniel, but Paxton as well. His goal, even though he kind of basically obstructed McGlynn's pass to Casper on that goal, he controls it well, puts on his left foot, and just puts it clearly in the back of the net. Jose, out of those 2 goals, any comments or notes you thought from watching the replay of those 2?
I would say that the Paxton goal was my favorite. Sure, when we get to the awards, I'll talk a little bit more about Mbaizo, but that Paxton goal, for him to have the know-how and know where of where he is on the pitch, to not even have to really lift up his head and just drive it low and hard where that keeper cannot get it. That is a special thing. By no means am I a professional soccer, but I know every time I take a shot, I need to figure out where the heck I am. So he certainly knows what he's doing, far younger than me. And, to Dave's comment on the comfort of that game, yes, that was 90 minutes of comfort. But the last time I think that the Union felt that comfortable must have been the second half against Saprissa, where we scored 4 goals and we really cruised into that win. I have not felt that comfortable in a long time. So it was welcome. I was not sweating.
No, I think it's been needed. Obviously, I think with how bad they've been on the road, and we sort of watch all these road games, it's sort of like, okay, we know that they're not going to keep a clean sheet, and it's just been consistent throughout the year, and it's always sort of panic buttons every single time we watch the Union on the road, which is why it's going to be so fun on Sunday night when they play against New York City FC, which is obviously going to be a barrel of laughs for all of us. But I think, again, obviously speaking about the Paxton goal, it was just a fantastic goal all round. Like, he didn't look like a 17-year-old playing what was like making his 6th start in professional football. He did so well to obviously. It was an accidental sort of collision with the ball, essentially. He did so well to get the ball under control, drive into the box, and then to be able to drive it and curl it into that bottom corner, giving the keeper no chance. It was just, he looks like a natural finisher. And I think I've been saying to Mike earlier in the week, and I think this comment might draw up some controversy with some Union fans. He's going to be better than Brendan. He's going to be miles better than Brendan, just the sort of player he is, what he's doing now, and the fact he's contributing in the first team at this age and positively as well, not just coming on for 5 minutes and in like a 5-0 thrashing. He's actually starting games. He's contributing to the team, scoring crucial goals. I think he's going to be a better player than Brendan. We're going to be seeing Paxton playing in Europe within the next 3-4 years.
I wonder if Brandon Aronson kind of broke Jim in a good way, right? Where he had his hesitations about Brendan. He had his hesitations about him starting games. And sure, maybe it was just not earned. Maybe he just wasn't ready. But for him to be throwing some of these, I'll call them kids. I'm a 30-year-old. So granted, they're 16, 17-year-olds, right? Some of these kids who are well beyond where there should be, like a Jack McGlynn or a Brandon Aronson. I'm sorry, a Paxton Aronson, a Sullivan. It makes you wonder, all right, Paxton's in. Who's the odd man out? Because that kid's balling right now. So who is the odd man out in that lineup? And it just makes it really, really interesting, especially when you start thinking about the decisions that need to be made come December 31st, 2022, when a couple of players' contracts, maybe they don't get their options picked up. Maybe they're just sold prior to it. It'll be an interesting time and certainly a fun time to be a Union fan.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny because I think entering the season, we had a lot of questions with the bench. We said, is the bench too young? can these players really contribute on a consistent basis, especially in times when they're the Union need a spark off the bench, not just 85th minute, up 3-0, whether in an important match where they can actually make a contribution. And I think every single one of those three players have stepped up and improved throughout the season. I think to start, I thought Jack McGlynn was the most ready to start the season out of the three players. I think Quinn Sullivan had his few lightning in the bottle moments. I think he can still develop more overall as a player. But Paxton went from just a couple minutes early on to really, like as you mentioned, being one of our subs that we can trust on a regular basis to make something happen, whether it be scoring or facilitating as well. So that's one of the most
don't get carried away when we actually sub.
That's true. That's true. But I think that's what, and it kind of alludes to next season. You've seen these players with question marks early on, and now these answers are being finally, come to fruition. And next year in particular, you have players like Fluck, Paxton, Jack McGlynn, even Mbaizo and Elliot. These core group players who you have a lot of faith in now entering next season. So it's as much as you want to focus on now in 2021, there is a lot of excitement now building for next year as well.
Don't forget to add to that group our Italian export right now, Jack DeVries, who is doing very well in Italy as well, getting some minutes. So don't forget about him. Yeah,
is that for the Venezia B team, is it? Or?
Venice, he's actually getting some time. So just keep that in mind as you think about this group and the decisions that need to be made by our front office here in the coming months. It's again, it's hard to believe that we're talking about the same Union team from 10 years ago.
No, absolutely. I think again it just shows.
Yeah,
it just shows it's night and day, as you said. But I think as well, it's just so crucial as to how, as you mentioned beforehand, like Jim's sort of broken his own curse of being hesitant to use the younger players. I mean, we did see it at stages earlier in the season where, the team was screaming out for sort of, lightning in the bottle sort of players that weren't afraid to take risks in games against teams like Orlando when they were 2 goals down, things like that. And Quinn Sullivan came on, Paxton Harrison came on, Jack McGlynn came on. They all made positive impact. They might not have scored the late equaliser, but they all came on. They created chances, and that's what this team has perhaps lacked at times from the more veteran players when they've come on. And I think again that links to the game against New England when they, I think, it was when they were when they before the Club America game where Jim decided he was going to rest half the first team, and then he then decided he'd bring on Casper. He brought on Jamiro Montero in Garsdag. He brought on all these like core first team guys, and the team just looked dead. It looked like they just looked like they weren't in the game in the second half as opposed to the first half. And Paxton was creating chances. Jack McGlynn was in the game having a positive impact. Quinn Sullivan was playing well. And then just sort of the team just went flat the second half. I think, again, as we said, these guys are fearless. They, again, obviously, you don't want to burn them out too soon. You don't want to overuse them. You don't want to overwork them because, again, they're only kids. But again, it's obviously great to see them having such a positive impact early on. And it's so exciting, at least for an exciting future as opposed to, when we go into new seasons, into transfer windows. It's not going to be like, we need someone to replace, Bedoya now because Bedoya's retired. You're going, there you go. Jack McGlynn's going to slot in right there. Yep. Oh, no. Jamiro Montero has finally been sold. Il Senior's retired. No, we've got Paxton Harrison. We've got Quinn Sullivan right there just to slot in. Right. Oh, no, we've sold Olivier Mbaizo. Excellent. Nathan Harriel has looked good when he's played.
Yeah, don't forget him. That's right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
He's had some promise. I mean, we saw the assist with Paxton earlier this month, how great he looked on that side of the ball, and he shows a lot of promise as well on the defense. I think he's probably still a year away from really being that next level player who can play a consistent 90 minutes. But as you said, Dave, it gives you a lot more hope and certainty moving forward. But speaking of moving forward, we obviously have a huge match this weekend against NYCFC, a team that we all love and is near and dear to our hearts. And of course, we end the year on Decision Day in that shoebox that is Yankee Stadium. Jose, as a Union fan like myself for many years now, this is not a fun place to play in. seeing it on the schedule, knowing how important this match is, where is your comfort level entering Sunday?
I'm gonna watch it. I'm interested to see what the lineup looks like. Right, we have something to play for. We really do, but we don't have all the marbles to play for either. Right, when it comes to a home game. So, what does the lineup look like? Is this a time that Bueno comes in? Is this a time where Davo comes in to be a starter and show us what they're all about, especially after spending that type of money? May it be a loan or thinking about purchasing? I don't know. I don't know. It's a weird time. I don't know how to describe it because again, I care about it, but I don't care about it. I know I have my tickets section 140 for the playoff game, so I know I'm going. I just don't know against who or when. So it is what it is. It's New York. It's a rivalry in a way, I-95 type of rivalry. Just not as concerned as I would have been in previous games, if that makes sense.
It does in a way. Dave, how about yourself? What do you think about? I mean, there's some playoff implications, as Jose mentioned. We really don't know what could happen. Yeah.
So do you guys want me to run through sort of the permutations for the Union?
Yes.
So again, they can still finish. They can still finish second, third, or fourth. They can finish any of these places. So they finish second if they win. If they win the game, they're second regardless. Or if they draw against NYCFC, and Nashville also draws. And then, of course, if Nashville loses and the Union draw, the Union also come second anyway. They finish third if they draw and Nashville win. Or they finish third if they lose to NYCFC, Nashville loses to the Red Bulls. But the Union will finish fourth if they lose to NYCFC and Nashville win. And who wants a very fun stat, which, is obviously going to fill everyone with confidence? Who wants a fun stat? So since NYCFC entered the NFL, the Union have never won a game. NFL? Sorry, I've got the NFL. MLS, I've got Thursday Night Football up on the TV. But sorry, in the MLS. Since the NYCFC have joined the MLS, the Union have never won at Yankee Stadium.
Huh.
So that means we're due for a win, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. We're due for a win.
We're breaking the curse. That's what you're saying.
Breaking the curse. But I think, again, as you said, obviously, you can look at it one way as, oh, okay, I mean, it doesn't really matter too much. We've got one playoff game at home. I think Jim will look at it the other way as we've struggled on the road for so long now. We need to try and win this game irrespective. Because then if we get 2 home playoff games, and then there's a chance we get the 3rd home playoff game in the Eastern Conference Finals, if the New England Revolution get knocked out before they get to the finals. So I think that will be the big thing. I think you have to obviously play for that second spot because, again, you've been so bad on the road. You've got to try and get as many home playoff games as you can before you do have to go on the road. If that is an Eastern Conference Finals, I'd rather it be there than having to go to Nashville. As me and Mike have discussed so often in the podcast, we'd much rather play Nashville in the second round at home as opposed to having to go to Nashville or the 3rd round, whatever, as opposed to having to go to Nashville and, trying to grind out a win against a team, as we all know, is fantastic at home, is fantastic defensively. And, sometimes the Union are a team that, can't really get anything going in attack when they are on the road.
And when we played Nashville this past month, they were missing some players, and then they had the injury in the middle of the match as well. So I feel confident if Nashville comes to Philly. But if we're going there, as I've said time and time again, I do not want to play them in their home stadium. I do not feel confident that we'll even, we could even pull off a draw if that was a possibility. I just don't feel confident in that sense. But looking at the playoff picture right now, as it is today, Philly is in second, as you mentioned. Nashville's in third. NYCFC is in fourth. Orlando, and then the Red at 7 points. Montreal's at 46, so they're right outside the playoff picture there. So if this season were to end as it is right now, we'd be playing the Red Bulls in the first round, which of course at home would be gives you memories of 2019 when we played the Red Bulls previously in the home playoff game. And then from there, in terms of the gambling side of things, Dave, history and the gambling books are kind of in sync here. Philly's at plus 300 to win, and NYCFC is minus 140. So everything's pushing for the Union to lose this match. But I think you make a good point. You want to end the year on a good note. Yeah. I think history has told us that if you make the CCL and you advance far enough in that tournament, you will not finish at a high mark on the regular season for the MLS. The Union, as of right now, have broken that trend by putting themselves
Yeah,
in the second spot in the Eastern Conference. So I think it's almost a sense of pride that you want to finish the year despite all the troubles and tribulations at the second position.
yeah.
But Jose, you alluded to the formation and the players. What would you want to see this weekend with the formation or the lineup?
Gosh, I would love for them to continue to experiment, though. I guess it's not really an experiment anymore with the Christmas tree, right? Continue to work on that, since it brought out the best out of some of the players that we've been really waiting for them to perform, as in Garsdag and really our outside backs really taking advantage of that space down the lanes. But I would really like to see him experiment with some of the young guys, right? Keep bring in Jack, bring in Paxton, and can we finally see what these guys that we brought in are made out of, right? Bueno and Davo. Will we actually see them? But I know we also need Casper to build up some confidence after that horrific
Yeah.
miss this past weekend, where sitting in the river and watching it, my father-in-law just looked at each other, thinking to myself, he could have humped it in. He could have done anything but what he did, and it would have gone in. It was amazing to see that miss. So, I'd like to see for him to obviously continue to work on what's been working, but also continue to experiment with what we have on the bench and haven't used too much of.
That's fair enough. I think.
Yeah.
I think I'm on the opposite
Dave.
end of the spectrum. I think I'm more at the idea of win at all costs, get your first team out there, and who you think today. Well, if Jim should play, whoever he thinks will start in that first playoff game against NYCFC, get everyone in there, get minutes, get everyone with minutes, build some confidence, and just try and again, you need to win that game. I think it's going to be a massive game for them, and again, they could end up having to play NYCFC on the road in the playoffs anyway. Again, if Nashville fails to win, if Nashville loses, then you've got what's it called? You've got sorry, just seen Naim Hines has just scored like a 40-yard touchdown. But the game you've then got to go back to Yankee Stadium. You've then got to go back to Yankee Stadium and play a team that you've literally just lost to in the playoff in the final regular season game. So again, it's going to be. I think it's a game that you'd rather go into wanting to win with your best team, the team you're going to start in the first round of the playoffs. Do you potentially risk someone like Sergio Santos to give you something a bit different, as opposed to with Kasper's, again, we've discussed this plenty of times. Kasper's a very isn't the quickest of players. He's a very he's more of the ball at his feet and having players feed off him, getting in the box and poaching in that sense. So do you perhaps chuck Sergio and then risk him? Would you, Jose? Would you risk Sergio?
Absolutely not. We need that man for his speed and to stretch the field when we're at home for our playoff game. I think you give him another week to rest that quad, and I wouldn't even dress him. I wouldn't even take him onto the bench. Just have him sit in the stands. Honestly, just don't even dress today.
Even if Union are drawing 1-1 with 10 minutes to go against NYCFC, who have 10 men, Nashville are winning, you need the goal. You still want to put Sergio on, even for the last 10 minutes, try and get a goal.
Maybe my eyes are on the prize and on the bigger picture. We're sure seeding is very, very important, but when it comes to that man and what he can give us in 35, 40 minutes of full Sergio, it surely outweighs what we could get in 10 minutes and the seeding, in my opinion, just speaking out loud.
And I think, sorry, David, I think Jose brings up a point as well in terms of playing the youth. One of our concerns that we've been preaching all year long has been the health and the longevity of this roster, who are continuously starting. I mean, look at the back four; they start every match. They don't take a break. No. Alejandro Bedoya constantly playing to the 89th, 90th minute. Maybe this is a chance where he gets a little bit more rest before the playoffs, where maybe you see Quinn Sullivan come in or McGlynn or something like that. So I think I agree with both of you guys. I want to see the best starting 11. And I want to say that at the end of Sunday night, the Philadelphia Union are the second best team in the Eastern Conference. But at the same time, you do have to look big picture. You need your captain out there healthy in the playoffs with his experience. You need to see what these younger players, even Bueno, someone who we've seen bits and pieces of of what can he do in a more serious match? Can he be trusted in the playoffs? It is a bit of a tryout as well as it is a push for that. And we have one home match, and for sure, if we win that home match, everything else will fall into place. You'd hope, at least. So I can agree with both sides there. I'm certainly a bit of on the fence as well. But in terms of score predictions, Jose, what would you say is a good score for the team, and what do you expect to happen?
Okay, those are two very different questions.
They are.
I fully expect a 1-0 loss, some sort of Mickey Mouse goal in that Mickey Mouse field that they play on. Just a joke of a field that they get away with. Ideally, I would like a 2-0 win, and both goals by a Casper, right? To again, such a streaky player that once he gets 2 under him, maybe he keeps things rolling in the playoffs. He just needs that little bit of a run up, that little bit of a boost leading into the playoffs. And both hopefully assisted by a young guy, maybe a McGlynn or maybe an Aronson. That's my hope, but we'll see what happens. Sunday can't come soon enough.
Oh my God, I know. Dave, how about yourself? Some predictions here.
I can see it being a draw, and then Nashville scoring a shitty last second winner to get the second spot or something. We're all sat there like, job done, easy point, second place, and you just get a notification. Oh well, Nashville's second, whatever. But I probably think it'll be a draw because it'll be a 1-1, 2-2. That's sort of been the Union trend on the road recently. But again, a good result, just a win, a good win, irrespective of whether it's comfortable. Last second winner, 3-1 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Just a win. Don't care what it could be. It could be off the backside of Bizo from 40 yards, or whatever. Someone could just boot it into his backside. And it could, I don't care. As long as they win, that'll be the good result for me.
I think what I'm looking for, I think realistically speaking, I'm expecting a draw. I'm expecting a 1-1 or 0-0 draw.
So,
but what I really want to see is the Union take a lead on the road and comfortably hold the lead. That's one thing that we really haven't seen corrected recently, is the going away, earning that lead, having that goal advantage, and then letting it slip through your fingers. I understand that NYCFC is going to press you. I understand that you're not going to have a completely comfortable game once you take that lead, but I just want to see them play with more confidence with the lead. I think if they can do that, whether they finish second, third, or fourth, I will feel confident in this team. Well, I guess not fourth, but second or third, I will feel confident with them moving forward, because I know eventually we're going to have to go somewhere to go play on the road.
You can comfortably hold on to a lead on the road.
That's what I'm hoping for.
I mean, the teams can do that. I just thought it was some myth. I mean, after watching the last 5 months.
I know it's. I didn't think the Union. I didn't think it was a thing outside of Chester, Pennsylvania.
I mean, obviously they beat Cincinnati on the road, but that was
for scoring.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, guys, and this kind of came. This kind of came to my head as I was thinking and you guys were talking. Wouldn't this be a great situation to throw in the young guys, right? You're going into what is technically a rivalry game away from home. Give them that experience. So when it's finally time to perform and rubber hits the road away from home, some of these guys like the Aronsons, the McGlynns, maybe the Sullivans, and who knows, maybe we get a rare appearance by a Fontana of all names.
Sure.
We start seeing those guys get those types of experiences under their belts. Maybe something to think about as, we think about what can we get out of this besides seeding. That's not quantifiable in points, but maybe an experience.
I sort of feel that the only thing is, sorry to go off, I think the fact that Jim rested some starters against Cincinnati makes me think he's going to take this game seriously, purely because, I think obviously we didn't see, I don't think Montero started. Montero didn't start. I'm pretty sure obviously Jose didn't start. Again, I think obviously seeing a couple of players obviously get benched and get rested for the game makes me feel that perhaps the younger guys might not start, or perhaps he's literally just told them you've got 2 weeks off to the playoffs. Maybe it's the only thing to think of. Then, of course, we saw the 2 weeks off before the playoffs last year, and that was an absolute disaster. So,
yep. I'm sorry, David. Go ahead. Finish your thought real quick.
No, I was going to say it again. So, God knows what's going on in the big, wonderful mind of Jim Curtin. But I think that's just another thing just to chuck out there. The fact that he rested some starters against Cincinnati when they really did need to win that game. So, I think that's sort of a thing to check out there.
I think today, though, one thing I've noticed, though, has been Paxson and McGlynn getting some more time in significant moments. I think you do make a good point in sense of you do need to have them be battle tested, so to speak, in a high, crunch time situation. And we've seen Paxson now for 30 minutes at one point. We've seen McGlynn now replacing Fluck when you need a goal. So, though I agree that Dave that the stars are going to likely play, I expect to see extended time from one of those players, whether it be Paxton or Jack McGlynn. And at the end of the day, this is a test for them before the playoffs. This is as close to a playoff game as it's going to get for this team. So you really need to see who's made of what when it matters most. And I think the last month and a half has been almost like a playoffs. Considering they were in 9th place, September 15th? Now they're in 2nd place in the East. I feel like the entire month of October was a playoff match. So you're gonna see a lot, but I think we're all confident that this could be a draw. I think we're realistic and expecting a loss. But to end the regular season, we don't want to just the games and the matches. We want it to players and regular season awards. So that's one reason why we brought Jose on to talk regular season awards and give his thoughts on his favorite players on the team. So we're going to talk. Well, I guess let me bring the list up so we can go kind of step by step here with the awards.
Some breaking news
Dave,
that I just saw on Twitter that maybe need discussed. Tab Ramos out at Houston. Obviously, Tab, a huge part of the U.S. youth national team for as long as I can remember. So that's that's just a big name that's out there for coaching staffs to maybe drool over. And how sweet would it be to have his input with the Union? Not that I think he would settle for some sort of assistant position, but just interesting after, such a short time with Houston for that big of a name. Just interesting that they dropped him.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, just released an hour ago. So yeah, you're right. We got breaking news left and right on this show today on Across the Pitch. So thank you for bringing that up, Jose. I didn't even see that on Twitter. But we'll get right into the regular season awards here. And Dave, I'll start with first. So the first award we have here is for Player of the Year. Dave, who's your Player of the Year?
I think it's a difficult one. I think you could give it to easily 10, 11 players. But for me, it's quite an easy one. The first guy that came to my head was Kai Wagner. Again, I think Mr. Consistent for this team throughout the entire year. He's been there. He's played, apart from probably barring the red card. I think it was against Columbus Crew, I think it was. Barring that one red card, he's been Mr. Consistent. He's an all-star again. So again, he's been recognised by the league for how good he is. Best left back in the MLS. He's been sensational this year. I think it's the amount of goals he's created with that left foot, how good he's been defensively. I can't really think of many goals that have come down that left-hand side that the unit conceded. And again, I just think he has been so consistently good with everything that he's done. I think he's in double figures for assists. He's scored some crucial goals as well this season. Obviously, the goal against Chicago to save the embarrassing loss at home against 10 men. Do you know what I mean? He's come up with important contributions at important times. It's been consistently throughout the years. So, I mean, for me, no other player.
Jose, how about you? Player of the Year for the Union.
I have to agree with David. I almost felt like you were reading my paper. Number one in passes for MLS this year for the Union. Number one in passes. Number one in assists for the Union. And that's even so interesting because he's a left back. Number 3 in the squad for minutes played and tied second in, number 3 in minutes played and number 2 in games played, an all-star, which of course it's great recognition, though it may want to make you scratch your head. He earns as much as El Sino, though he plays a hell of a lot more. Just putting that out there as we got the salaries a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, yeah.
And frankly, I would dare say one of the best purchases the Union have ever made in their history with what they paid for him and what they're getting out of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he was to go overseas at some point or another, because as a 24, 25-year-old, I would not be surprised for him to go maybe in Germany for a lower level team in the Bundesliga. I'm not sure. But overall, I think he's probably the best player the Union have had this year.
I'm going to have to disagree with both of you, and I feel the only reason why I am, although I completely agree with all your points you're making. I'm looking at this list, and I can't have a list with the Union without having Andre Blake on this list. And I feel like for me, you saw what he did in the CCL. You've seen how many great saves he's made. Think about how many defensive miscues we've seen this season. And Andre Blake has been there to save us time and time again. And even though all the respect to Bendik and Matt Freese, there is no one else on this team like Andre Blake. So as almost like a cop out, easy answer, I put Andre Blake, but I think Kai Wagner is absolutely in the conversation for the player of the year on this team. And as you mentioned, for the price we're getting him, Jose, it's almost a crime how much value he has compared to how much we're actually paying for him. But segue into the next player of the year type style candidate. We have the next one to be young player of the year. So our most promising homegrown or young talent. Jose, I'll start with you. Who would be your young player of the year?
Maybe I'm stealing someone else's thunder here, but Paxton Aronson, he has been an incredible player this year as a 17-year-old, performing, I think, far beyond what we were expecting once he was signed last year, I think, and finally playing this year. Dave mentioned it earlier. I wouldn't be surprised if he's abroad with his brother in a couple of years, if not playing some serious minutes with the national team alongside his brother. So seeing two Aronsons on the field for the U.S. national team is not a dream anymore. I think it's something that we can maybe start counting on depending on how next year goes. But just glad he's a Union player for now.
Absolutely. Dave, how about yourself?
Well, the guy I'm going for is sort of more... It's not homegrown. It's obviously a guy who's come in this year, has become a very popular member of the team. Leon Fluck is my young player of the year. To come into the MLS at just 20 years old, having barely played in the lower leagues of Germany, St. Pauli, he came in, and obviously I think we all looked at that sort of signing with a lot of excitement because the name had been chucked around for a while, but thought he's going to be one of those guys that's going to take a couple of years, to really get adjusted into this team. But again, he's literally come in to this team and he's walked in, he's made that left sort of mid-centre or like left midfield position his own. He's been that good, he's been that consistent. And I think whenever we all discuss the Union now, we discuss the Union team, he's probably the third or fourth name on the team sheet, just how good he has been this year. And again, the age of 20, he's literally come into a new league, a new country. Okay, he's got American parents, he was born in America, whatever. He's come into a new system, everything, and he's literally taken to it like water. And I think, again, he's been incredible. His work rate, I think he's number one in win rate for tackles and things like that. Pressures, win rate for tackles, just how much he runs, just how much he contributes to the team. I know people will sit here and go, oh, well, he doesn't. He's not very good at crossing the board. He can't shoot. To be honest, I don't care as long as the players on my team give 110%. They don't stop running, don't stop working. That comes second. I think again he's just a sensational young talent who again we'll probably be seeing in the US men's national team soon, and again joining the likes of Mark McKenzie and Brendan Aronson in Europe, back in Europe again in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of those players have really been, the shining stars of the young group of players. For myself, I'm going a bit in the future here with why I'm picking him now and why I'm excited for him moving forward. And I went with Jack McGlynn. I think people forget how important he was early in the season when Jose Martinez wasn't there and he played on the left side of the diamond, and how well he performed in those short stints early on. And he gives so much promise out of the back, both facilitating as well as his shot. We saw him have a couple great shots at the end of that game in Cincinnati. So as great as Paxton is right now, and as great as Fluck is on the defensive side of the ball right now, I'm most excited to see how Jack McGlynn can develop. So even though he doesn't have the shining, accolades or moments as Paxton and Fluck has had, I'm really excited to watch McGlynn. I love watching him play. So for me, I'm picking McGlynn here. But next up, we have defender. Go ahead.
I was saying, can I quickly just speak about McGlynn quickly? Again, I think I've said it before to Mike, on Twitter or off camera, off live, that I think out of all the Union homegrown players that have come in this year, he looks the most pro ready, looks the most professional. And I think the way that he spoke in his I need to actually send you a clip, Mike. The way he spoke in the press conference after the Cincinnati game, because I spoke to him and Pax, and I sort of said, so obviously for you guys to come in, this is your first season as pros. You've come in, you've played so much as opposed to what other younger players have done in the past. You've played in the CCR, you've gone and you've played in all these games. Sort of, what's the experience been like? How have you dealt with it? And Jack sort of spoke so highly about Ali Bedoya and how much he's learnt upon him, how much he's learnt from him, and how he's essentially been a student of his game. And I sort of feel that Jack McGlynn is the heir to the throne of Ali Bedoya when he finally does retire or when he does leave and he goes off to another team. Maybe, like a team like Austin or Charlotte, whatever, to help a younger franchise help build the building blocks, which he did here, to be fair. I think Ali Bedoya coming here did somewhat kickstart this, this sort of, I don't want to go full on Nick Sirianni, but the blossoming of the Union sort of, the blossoming of sort of the Union franchise.
The roots.
He is. Ali Bedoya did start the roots. I mean, he came in and that was sort of the first guy that they signed from a big European team, a US international. I think, again, Jack McGlynn's going to be a future US international in the future, whether he's a consistent player or not. But I mean, I think he's the direct heir to that throne. I think he's a fantastic player with the brain / the smarts of someone that's way beyond his age, essentially.
Well,
I think
Jim Curtin compared him to Harris earlier in the season. He said he reminds me of Harris, not just with his left foot, but with his intelligence on the field. And you see it time and time again. And again, that's why, we could talk about Jack McGlynn all night. I don't want to talk too much about him, but again, this is why I have him as my young player of the year, because of how much promise he has, in my opinion, and what we've already discussed. Next up, though, for the next awards, we have Defender of the Year. I'll start off this one. I picked Jack Elliott as my Defender of the Year. I think beginning of the season, we all knew how clutch he could be defensively. We knew how he really solidified the center backs for us before the season. You saw how well he's done with Glesnes. But I think offensively, Jack has improved so much over the last 2 months that I can't. Every time I watch him play, I just feel like he's making a true contribution to this team, both on the offensive side and defensive side. So for me, it's Jack Elliott, and I've loved watching him develop over the last 2 seasons. Jose, I'll go to you. Who's your Defender of the Year?
I was actually going to say Elliot as well. He has blossomed, again, going Sirianni here, but he's really developed into an incredible piece that not too long ago, he was a question whether or not he was or should be remaining in the roster for the Union not too long ago. Mark McKenzie was here, which of course made it very difficult for him. And then Glesnes coming in made it somewhat difficult for him. And maybe the competition is what made him rise to the top. So to watch him develop into who he is, and having watched him at West Virginia through college soccer as well has been a lot of fun. And I think you're absolutely right with his offensive development as well, finding some really, really good balls. One that come to mind is, I think he was pushing forward against Atlanta or maybe I forget who it was, but he just pinged a ball across the field into the path of Santos, who of course could not finish the ball, but certainly got separation from his defender. But nonetheless, that was a 40-yard ball that I did not expect a center back to put in. That was a Harris Medujinin special right there that we obviously don't see very often anymore. But nonetheless, it was a nice throwback to see from a defender that was wearing Union colors.
Absolutely. Dave, how about yourself? Defender of the Year?
Well, I think it's a full house. Again, I've got Jack Elliott written down here. I mean, the guy's been awesome this year. I think, again, we all had concerns after Mark McKenzie left in last year, sort of who is going to take that spot. I mean, obviously, we saw Jack deployed to sort of holding in the 6 a lot last year. Again, obviously, I think he was more utilised there as opposed to in that back 4 because Glesnes and McKenzie has built such a good relationship, and for him just to walk in and make that position his own. Obviously, they signed Stuart Findlay, didn't they? So I think again that was sort of we all thought maybe perhaps he's going to be the guy to take over from Mark McKenzie. But I guess Jack Elliott's lived up to the competition. He's faced up this competition and he's probably made him a better player. I think out of the 2 of him and Glesnes this year, I think Jack's been the better player. He's made less mistakes. Again, obviously, Jack has scored some incredible goals for the Union, but I think his offensive contributions have been more significant as well. As as obviously you both mentioned, he's actually getting on the ball. He's playing these fantastic diagonal 40-yard passes. He's again, obviously, him and Sergio have such an incredible sort of link/partnership in the way that Elliot knows where to put the ball for Sergio to run onto. He does that so often. We've seen it in so many games, and it's created a different. It's made the Union much more dynamic in going forward because they're utilising that pace more. And I think they've unlocked that together, and I think Elliot has become more confident doing that as the games have gone on, as we've seen. So again, I think the Union back four has been sensational. I didn't want to give all the awards to Kai Wagner because that could have been easily done. But I mean, I think taken in circumstances and where Jack was over the last couple of seasons, as Jose said, he was probably a year away. If he didn't live up to the expectations or play well this year, it was a year away from being moved on, going back to the UK, playing in England or Scotland. He's literally taken this role by the scruff of his neck. Says to Stuart Findlay, not today, and it's now his position for the foreseeable future. Has been excellent.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we've all mentioned different points of why Jack Elliott deserves this award, and I think you make a great point. Stuart Findlay was brought in to give some more certainty, and Elliott just hasn't let him see the field, which is amazing. Credit to him and credit to Glesnes for working so well with him as well. Going to go up the field though, up the formation with midfielder of the year. Dave, I'll go with you first. Who was your favorite midfielder this past season?
I mean, again, I'm sorry to reuse my answer from earlier, but Leon Fluck, again, I think if you look across the entirety of the midfield this season, Jose has been incredibly frustrating at times, making bonehead decisions, and I will moan about Jose in a minute as we discuss some other stuff. Ali Bedoya had a really, really big rough patch in the middle of the CCL campaign, and it's quite, again, I think he deserves a lot of credit. I sort of feel like he is the heart of the team. Whenever he's in a good run of form, the team is. And we've seen that since they've been knocked out the CCL. His game has gone up to another level. But again, I can't give it to him because he was so poor for a good month and a half, 2 months, which to the point we didn't want him to be in that team. Obviously, Jamiro Montero probably hasn't been as great as he has been in previous years. And again, obviously, he didn't play. Obviously, went for a couple of weeks without playing for personal reasons. And again, just Leon's been that one consistent, and he's been used everywhere. You need to play as a left midfielder in the back in front of a back three. He'll do it. You need to play in the 6. He'll do it. Chuck him at the 10. He'll do it. And I just think he's been the epitome of consistency this year, and everything that he's done, he's been absolutely sensational.
Jose, how about yourself? Midfielder of the year?
I would agree with him again. My gosh, I think that reasonable minds are actually agreeing on some things here. Yeah. But yeah, Leon Fluck has been incredible this year. If not for Kai, I would say that he's probably been one of the best purchases that the Union have made in many, many years. Mr. Reliable has played a heck of a lot, and whenever he plays, it's pretty consistent at a high level. And I'm excited to see what he develops into in the coming years once we start building a roster with him and around him that can bring the best out of him. So Dave also said it, I would love to give it to Martinez and Jamiro after just some breakout seasons, but frankly, they both kind of feel like liabilities now, right? Jamiro maybe gets drawn out the field a little bit too far up and doesn't get back. Martinez, it could be any 1 second during those 90 minutes that could be a red card. And,
That's true. That's true.
There goes the game.
Or a turnover.
Or a turnover.
Yeah.
But, when you think about productivity as well, we can talk about Jamiro later, but when you compare him to other midfielders who are, again, earning as much as the man, if not a little bit more, or maybe a little bit less, we're not getting the same productivity. So some questions need to be asked about him and what he's actually producing for the Union.
Yeah. One of our fellow followers, Eric, mentions one of our signings, Mbole, is better than him. No way, no way a signing's better than Mbole, which we know was a fun time of the Union history there. But go ahead, Dave. Finish your thought there.
I was gonna say, I just nailed on the head. He's been fantastic, and as he said, just again, he's been fantastic this year, Mr. Consistent, and. Actually, obviously, Jose, now we've got someone else on the podcast to discuss this. As you said, we sort of feel like Jose's a liability in front of the back four. As he's a turnover. He's such a risky player. He loves to play around on the edge of the box and take risks. And again, he's a guy that makes critical turnovers at critical moments, which cost the Union games. Do you sort of feel like he should be playing higher up the pitch with the way he actually plays the game? Perhaps swap him and Leon Fluck around because we sort of I think I've discussed it with Mike a few times. Like he's sort of the only player in that midfield that is comfortable getting on the ball and trying to take on 2 or 3 players. It might not work out, but he's actually comfortable trying to take these risks. I know he takes some long shots and it aggravates Mike a lot, but sometimes I don't mind it if the Union aren't actually doing anything to attack. They've not had a shot and they're dilly-dallying around the box. Sometimes I don't mind that. I'd rather see a guy actually try and score as opposed to, being worried to put in a cross because a defender might touch it. That's sort of my attitude. I think he should be playing as an 8 as opposed to a 6.
Yeah, frankly, we don't even have to talk about moving him. Sure, we can, and we will in a second. But I think what we really need is Jose Martinez to sit down with Jim Curtin and really tell him, hey, we get it. You're a Venezuelan international. Ever since he got that call up for the national team, I think his ego has gotten over him, where he has been acting the way that he does and plays the way that he does. Sure, he was a liability a couple of years ago, but ever since he's been called up to the national team, I think he's become a different player. And I think as you think about the games that Martinez has played and where he has been more of an emotional wreck with not liking what Casper's doing, I think about that penalty kick that he took away from Mbaizo or however that scuffle was a couple of weeks back. During I think it was the 3-1 victory against Orlando, where the whole PK incident where him and Bizo and some others were just kind of arguing about it. Yeah, Martinez is just a liability. If we got to do something with him, which we do because of the contract that we have, pushing him up probably isn't a bad thing, because I'm sure we're going to talk about maybe assist of the year or whatnot, but he is actually the person who came up with the assist of the year for me when he was going down the line, beat 2 players and cross it low and hard for Casper. So he can give you both worlds in like 10 minutes.
Yeah, and that is why I think he should be playing higher at the pitch. There is no other player in that Union midfield that has the ability to do that. We've seen Ali Bedoya. He can't do that. He can't, he hasn't got the footwork. He hasn't got the pace to, weave his way out of 2 or 3 players. Leon Flack just isn't technically good enough in that sort of sense of the game. He's more of a gritty, hard-working player, which, again, as I said, those are the sort of players I love. But again, I think Jose is the player that can do that in this team. And it's so frustrating when we were in that horrible patch of games where the Union just looked dreadful. I think just around when they were going around the Club America games, he was sort of the only player in that midfield that did try and take the games, try and take a game to teams, did try and shoot, did try and weave his way through some players and, beat his man. And as Jose said there, he actually he's capable of, putting in a good cross, beating 2 or 3 players. You know what I mean? I think that's sort of my sort of feelings towards it. Mike, obviously you haven't actually given your midfielder of the year.
No, I'm in agreement with both of you guys, and I think you have to look at maybe who's not the best player on the field of the midfielders, but who has been the most consistent on the field. And I think without question you have to go Leon Flack. Bedoya has ups and downs. Jamiro has been absent. Martinez, we've already discussed him at length. With his issues, both with confrontation and on the field as well. Flock's been great, and it's similar to my Young Player of the Year award. The future he has for this team is very bright, and I think he does fit into that 6th spot very well. And he brings such a high intensity every single time he plays, every single match, every single moment. He is going 1,000 miles an hour. In a lot of ways, that's the perfect Philadelphia athlete, a player who may not be the best, but who plays 1,000 miles an hour and will give his hardest every single time. And the athletes who are beloved in this city are the ones who are like Leon Flack, who try their hardest no matter who they're playing against. So I tip my hat to him, and I think we've all said a lot of great things about Leon. He definitely deserves Midfield of the Year. Another step up the formation here is Forward of the Year. I'll lead off right here on this one with I'm going to go Sergio Santos. And I think as much as he's been off the pitch with injuries and everything else in between, I think his importance to this team is so obvious. How many times have we been calling for Sergio to come into the match when he was on the bench? How many times has he spread the defense out when Casper just isn't able to do that? How many times have we seen Casper and Burke play together, and it looks like the offense has no idea what they're doing? when healthy, I think Sergio Santos is by far the best forward we have on this roster. Jose, I'll segue to you. Who would you think is the forward of the year for this team?
I agree with you. By the way, I wrote this at like 10 a.m. So it's not like I'm just giving it off the out of nowhere. But yeah, Sergio, despite being riddled with injuries, every time he starts or he makes a late game appearance, the game just tilts the way of the Philadelphia Union. Blazing speed, his ability to stretch the pitch, are just some things that the Union lack whenever we have a Casper up top or we have a Burke up top that are great at holding the ball and slowing down the game, but we just can't rely on them to go and chase a ball and try to hold it to put something across low and hard. So, gosh, to think if and maybe I'm asking for a little bit too much, but if he was a guy who's healthy and had just a slightly better finishing,
Yeah.
I think easily double digits in goals year in and year out with that combination of finishing, speed, and just really creativity when it comes to being in the box. Again, could be a top scorer in this league. It's just that he's missing 2 out of those 3 things.
Yeah, and Eric again mentions, as we've already said, the healthy. If he is available, which feels like it just he goes from one quad injury to the next. He just seems to always come up limping every time he goes down. It's one of those things where it's one of those what if moments. You're gonna look back on his career as a Philadelphia Union player, and you're gonna think, man, what if he was healthy for an entire season? Dave, your thoughts on the forward of the year?
I went for Kasper. I think again, obviously, he's had his frustrating moments in terms of he's had his struggles, but I think all the Union strikers had. Obviously, Sergio's been absent probably more than he's played, and that's probably half the reason why I haven't gone for him as my forward or striker of the year. I think the fact that Kasper's been available for every single game this year, he's contributed so much to the team with assists and the goals he's scored, because he has scored some very crucial goals. I think that's sort of the entire reason why I think that his availability and how much he has provided for the team this year, and a team in at times which we probably look at and think, where is the attacking quality? I think he has been played such a big part for this team. I think that's sort of it's again. I think it speaks for itself, really.
I mean, if you look too, and I think this is one reason why I would lean towards Casper. When's the last time Sergio and Burke have both been on the roster at the same time? I mean, it just feels like it never happens. As soon as one's in, one
Um,
goes out. Cat unhealthy the entire season, and credit to him for healthy. And imagine if he as often as he was, who would be playing forward? Will we trust Garsdag up there? Will we trust Quinn Sullivan or Dava? Will we trust to see them on a weekly basis? As much as I still lean Sergio overall, I do agree that Casper's availability has been vital for this team, especially when both Sergio and Burke weren't there.
yeah, I agree. I think this team would have been this season could have gone a lot differently if Kasper had gotten hurt. Because again, as we said, we haven't been able to rely on Sergio because of his injury record. Obviously, Corey was at the Gold Cup for a while, so again, the Union without Corey for a few games, and again,
Yep.
now he's just come off injury. So I think, again, I think he has been a lifesaver for this team, even if he hasn't played as well as we've become used to in terms of Well, we know he's a very streaky striker. When he scores goals, he scores goals. But his availability has probably been his best ability this year in terms of he's been a lump up front. He's been a presence. He's created things. He's scored important goals. And that's sort of why it's made. That's why I've gone for him as my forward of the year.
Imagine if we got
Yeah.
a MLS is back tournament Casper for this postseason. What a beautiful thing that would
Oh
be.
man.
Oh god! Again, Sergio Santos
We,
was the reason why the team got so far. I mean, that was don't bring that back up. That Portland
yeah,
game.
we
Of
have.
course, I say that in jest. I'm glad
Portland
you guys
game.
caught that.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, we just hoping for. I mean, both of them are streaky at times. We're just hoping that the streak hits, the highest temperature possible entering these last couple weeks. So we're hoping for the best with them. But
Oh my
coming
God.
down on our final few awards, breakout star. I'm gonna go Paxson. I mean, I think we've said this time and time again already today. What he's been able to do at such a young age, with so much so many people looking at him because he is Brendan's brother and because how successful Brendan has been overseas. Everyone's expecting Paxton to be better than him, which is unfair to Paxton, honestly. But a breakout story, I can't see myself picking anyone else besides Pat Anderson because of these moments that he's able to produce at such a young age when most players at his time are just not able to play that. Dave, your breakout story.
Well, I've gone sort of a different route. I've gone for Olivier Mbaizo. Because,
Okay.
I mean, the guy's sort of, he's come into a position where Ray Gaddis has held the right back spot for so long. And again, I think, he was an unknown quantity this year. No one really knew what we were going to get at right back. Again, I don't think Mbaizo's really played many games for the Union in the past, or if any. So, I mean, coming into this year, again, I think we're all sort of questioning how this was going to go. Was Matt Real finally, the two-footed wonder, was he finally going to get his chance to play consistently in the team? We know how that's turned out. But, the guy has contributed so much to this team this year in attack. He's probably, again, he's been one of my favourite players, as Mike knows. I speak so highly of him. And the fact he's come into the team, he's made that right back spot his own with Alvis Powell obviously coming in as well. It's not really been a competition. He contributes so much in the attack as well, just like Kai does. And okay, yeah, he has his lapses of judgment. He makes an odd mistake, but I think at this sort of level of football, you are going to get fullbacks that are either very good in attack or very good at the back. You're not going to get a player that's really good at both, or they're going to be average at both. Do you know what I mean? So I think Kai is probably one of the few. What's the word? Kai's sort of one of the few sort of anomalies that can do both very well. So again, I think Mbaizo's come in. He has the definition of a breakout player.
Yep. Jose, how about yourself?
I gotta go with Dave. That's what I had written down. What an incredible season Olivier Mbaizo has had this year, right? He went from obscurity, living in the shadows of Ray Gaddis after so many seasons, to now holding down that spot and really making it his own. And, overthrowing someone like a Matt Real, who we used to have a lot of stock in, but now no longer really even think about him coming in unless it's a dire situation. I don't know if you guys use Transfer Market, but his value has certainly grown over the last couple of years, going from maybe $250,000 to almost $1 million alone just in one season. So he's certainly developing, I think, into his own, and excited to see, and hopefully it continues to climb. Can't really blink at someone who plays 82% of the total minutes too. So reliable, and we talk about Philly athletes. There's nothing more Philly than losing a tooth for this city.
That's true.
That's very true.
What? That is by far one of those moments, kind of like Union folklore. In 20 years, remember that time when Mbaizo lost a fake tooth on the field in Mexico? No, you're right, and so much credit to what he's done. As you mentioned, Ray Gaddis was here for so long. I mean, our longest leading minutes getter for Union history. So he comes in and we've seen him get better and better offensively, working with Bedoya on the right side of the field. So I think Olivier absolutely deserves that recognition. A few more here, like I said before. We're going to go game of the season. For me personally, was a game that I attended for AAT Sports Network. And that was the home game against Toronto when Sergio Santos just had that magical first half, and we just put a beat down on a team that had been kind of hot at the moment. For me, I've been watching this team now for years, and that particular 45-minute stretch is one of the best 45 minutes I've seen from this roster for maybe the last few seasons. They've just clinical, aggressive, and lethal, especially from Sergio Santos, which is when we saw him play at his absolute best. So for me, that was my game of the season. Dave, how about you? What was your match of the year?
I think it's one that probably the definition of a game of two halves. And it was the game that made me believe, do you know what? They might actually do it. Was the first leg against Atlanta in the CCL when they won 3-0. That was the game where that made me wake up and think, oh damn, they have a good chance of actually, maybe actually reaching the finals, doing something big here. And it was just one of the, I think when people look back at that game, I know it wasn't as it's not as spicy as say going to Club America and winning, or thrashing Saprissa. But I mean, again, I think there was an interesting stat that Atlanta hadn't lost a game at home in the CCL ever, and so the fact the Union went in there and managed to survive the onslaught of getting battered in the first half, and then to come out in the second half and put on the clinic, the clinic they did was just sensational.
That's a great point. And that's one reason why I had Blake as my player of the year, because imagine if you didn't have Andre Blake for 45 minutes, how much different this Union season could have been. Because Atlanta was killing us in that first half, and it could have easily been 2-3-0. You come home, you don't pull off the, you don't advance the next round, and who knows what this year could have been. So, I think that's a great point, Dave. That was one of those matches that really gave you a lot of promise for the year. Jose, how about the match of the season for you?
One last thing to Dave's point, never mind the turf, the change of surfaces for our team, and to put down that clinic on the second half. You're absolutely right. But for me, I think I'm just really proud to have been able to say that I watched the very first CCL game that this team ever played. I was not there in person, but certainly to be able to watch that game, a 1-0 win against Saprissa, and to see my breakout star of the year and Olivier Mbaizo put that cross to Kasper Shavilko, score that beautiful header, was just one of those things where I remember where I was. I was in King of Prussia eating sushi in my living room, watching it, thinking to myself, wow, it's late, but I am so glad I'm watching this. So I'll never forget that Saprissa game. Again, they weren't the greatest competition, but the fact that I was able to watch the very first CCL game this team ever played, it's an honor in itself, and something certainly memorable and something we should celebrate.
Yeah.
I think, Jose, that's a great... Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
I think I was going to say that's a very nice segue into the next award, which is probably our most memorable moment in the season. So if you remember, Mike, I think that game against Saprissa is up there as a joint memorable moment in the season for me. Obviously with Kasper's goal, the first goal for the team in the CCL, as Jose said, with Olivier's fantastic cross and Kasper's header. But I mean, that was sort of the game that kick-started our Union coverage for AAT Sports. That was the game when we were sort of discussing, we were discussing with the guys, we've been beating our chest going, this is why the Union are the best team in Philadelphia at the time. And they were sort of like, why don't you guys just start, actually covering the team? And we said, do you know what, screw it, we'll start covering the team, writing about the game. So again, that sort of kick-started sort of a nice little Easter egg to where we are today. That sort of that game, that moment sort of trickled down to what we've done so far. Again, that's probably one of my memorable moments up there. That's why it's one of my most memorable moments, as well as that Glesner's goal. I think we all, I don't think any of us will ever forget that anytime soon. Just that absolute thunderbolt from about 40 yards out when the game looked lost and done, and then within about 3 minutes, the Union we were all sat there thinking, could they win 3-2? Could they do this? So again, that was Oh,
no, I agree with you. I think Dave is one of those things where I'm fortunate here being in the United States, being able to cover the team personally, one-on-one. I know you're overseas actually, but although this is not my most memorable moment, I'll segue into what mine is in a second. Being able to finally get that media pass and say, hey, you're going to be in the press box covering this team on this day. I'm like, holy crap, this is really happening. So I agree with you. It was one of those wow moments that happened this year. But my most memorable moment of the year was actually Quinn Sullivan's bicycle kick. I thought is one of those goals where you're like, wow, these young kids really have a lot of confidence. And you just don't see that. We didn't see that growing to the Union ups and downs of the last decade. This young talent coming in just blowing our socks off. So for me, the Quinn Sullivan bicycle kick was one that I'll never forget. Watching Sergio's reaction, Jack Elliott's reaction, I just love that moment entirely. How about you, Jose? What was your most memorable moment of the season?
Again, I go back to that CCL goal with Mbaizo to Shavilko, and the memories just start flooding in of just how exciting that was, and I remember how nervous I was leading into that game, saying to my wife, Andrea, the baby needs to go to sleep because I want to be fully paying attention to this. This is the very first time they're competing in this competition. We have no idea about this team. This is as obscure as playing a different team from another state type of thing, where you have no idea who they are in high school type of thing. But yeah, the CCL run as a whole, I would say, sure, it did not end the way we wanted it, but gosh, if you think about the Club America game, the very first leg where we almost scored in the first 30 seconds with a
Oh,
potential
no,
back
no.
heel by Civilco. What a
Yeah.
different story that first leg could have been. But again, my best moment would just be the CCL goal against Saprissa. Just so proud of this team after, just a memorable season the year before, that they just continue to keep it up. And we'll see what this one ends at, hopefully in December.
Yeah, I mean,
And I think Valerie brings up a good point. Many memorable moments this year. Last season was a bit odd with how many times we played in the Revolution, how many times we played
Yep.
just the same collection of teams. Even though we won the Supporter Shield, and obviously that was a memorable moment, the season just felt different. This year, through all the ups and downs, it doesn't matter if we make the conference finals, the MLS Cup. This season had a lot of memorable moments, whether it be the CCL, the emergence of our young stars, Leon Flack, the Mbaizo tooth being lost in a Club America Stadium. There's so many moments this year you're gonna look back on like, wow, this was a fun season. Whether they win or lose a title, it was a really fun year. But Dave, any last thoughts on the most memorable parts of the season?
I think, as you said, it was probably one of those moments. It feels like a proper season again. It actually feels like a proper season. You're actually going off. You're playing all these. You're actually playing the teams in your conference. You're actually able to sign players. You've got younger players coming in. As we were saying about the CCR run, I think I must have been one of the only people in the UK to actually be sat there at 4 a.m. in the morning watching Club America versus Philadelphia Union, sitting there with like a jangle of nerves, like, oh my god, this is it. This is the night. And again, when Cashball was scored in the first 30 seconds, I remember literally leaping off my chair, like, oh my god, no. And then
go ahead, Dave.
And then obviously we all know what happened. But I think it was one of those games. I think it probably segues into my worst moment of the season, which I've been pretty heated about, which I feel very passionately about, was the Jose Martinez giving away that ridiculously stupid penalty against Club America, which all but killed the tie.
Yeah, gosh.
No, I agree. It was one of those where it kind of just ripped your heart out because you had a chance to go to Chester and take care of business, and you couldn't because of that moment. Jose, how about you? What was your worst moment of the season?
I think the worst moment of the season can really be encapsulated into what was probably like two or 3 weeks of the Jamir Montero saga. He was suspended for some games, but we had no idea what was happening with one of our most expensive players ever, if not the most expensive player we ever bought. I could be wrong now. I haven't really checked into that. But to see, I have a shirt with his name on the back, and thinking to myself, oh, he could be gone. He could be asking to leave. What's going on in that locker room? And really not getting any pulse from that situation was kind of, well, it might be the end of that. We'll see how it goes. But, glad that they were able to sort it out. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with the faces who have emerged this year, and where the faces that have been around, where they land, whether it is with us or somewhere else across the MLS or across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just go back real quick. The most memorable moments, and Valerie mentions the Subaru Park Club America game. I don't know if you were there, Jose, or not, but the atmosphere there was unlike. The atmosphere was something that I have never seen at that stadium, and I don't care if there was 10,000 Club America fans there. The energy that they brought to that stadium. As I've mentioned when I was, covering that match, I was late by 45 minutes because of how much traffic was outside, and yet from outside in the parking lot, I could hear the roars of the stadium unlike I've ever heard before. And then being in there, it's like you got chills up your spine hearing how loud they were, especially after the PK save by Memo Ochoa, who I love, being a Mexican national fan. To watch, actually, watching Memo Ochoa was another one of my most memorable moments, because my family's from Mexico. Seeing him play live, especially with how many times I've rooted for him over the years, was such an incredible experience. But to my worst moment of the season, we'll get back on track here. And I think this is going to get forgotten. Anthony Fontana's concussion in Atlanta is my worst moment of the season because you had so much promise for him entering the year after what he was able to do for the Supporter Shield team. And that was the moment where
killed him.
That's it. And what happened to Fontana? He just vanished from this team. You had a player that was some of our other fellow fans' favorite player on this roster just suddenly disappearing. And credit to the players ahead of him who took that chance, that advantage. It's unfortunate. I would have loved to see more from Fontana. So that was my worst moment because he was in concussion protocol for so long. He never came back the same, and it is what it is. But moving forward here, we're going to go to the signing of the season, and we have two more after that. I know Eric's commenting. I'm bring your comments up in a second, Eric, about a goal here. But for signing of the season, I'll start this one off. I think we've mentioned already a few times Leon Fluck, because of what he gives you moving forward and how much promise he's shown for us and the energy he brings to this team. I think our front office has found a gem with Leon, especially because of how young he is still. I know he's not a homegrown player, but my God, it feels as if we're watching this kid grow up in front of us, just like we've seen with Paxton and Jack. Jose, I'll go to you first. Your signing of the season for the Union.
Not much to add there. Leon Fluck, I think we're all gonna, flaunt over him and sing his praises. But man, what a signing he has been. If anything, he is. Oh gosh, I don't even know how to describe it. One of the best performers this season, and we'll see. We'll see what he does. I always laughed actually when Danny Higginbotham and other commentators would talk about who ran the furthest, and more often than not, they would guess to one another. Let me guess, Leon. It's just like
Leon Fluck.
7 miles, 6.9, 7 miles. It's just like. There he goes. He does it again. He performs and works very, very hard for a city that demands it, and he certainly delivers.
Dave, how about yourself? How about the signing of the season?
Well, for me, I think it's a guy that's obviously he's come in. He's made a huge impact from the second he's been here. A lot of hype. We've all seen just how exciting his YouTube clips are. He's done a great job attending training, being at training. There's got to be Darvo. What a great signing he's proved to be. He's worked so hard since he's got. He's obviously contributed so much since he's gotten here. I think he's played about 7 minutes. No, but obviously, in all seriousness, I think it's Leon Fluck. I think there's no other guy. I think we both summed up perfectly. He's been fantastic since he's come here. Absolute workhorse, definition of a Philadelphia athlete, as this entire team is. I think this team is the definition of Philadelphia. Gritty, works himself into the ground, works so hard, and again, it's just the perfect representation of was a fantastic city.
Yep, I think we were all in agreement. I think we knew as soon as I said I knew who you guys were going to pick was Leon Fluck here. Going into the final two awards, we have the season, as Jose mentioned, I forgot to even put on our list, assists of the year as well. So we'll do a 2-for-1 here. Right now, I'm going to go to Eric's comment that he mentioned a bit earlier. Thor, Dave had mentioned previously, his goal, the 3-shot off the crossbar goal was one that I think I'll remember. But Dave, before I get to my goal, I'll start with you. Who was your goal of the season for the Union?
I think that I've given like a first and second place because I sort of feel like you have to mention them both. But obviously, I think one's probably more on the higher level than the other. The first is obviously, as Eric mentioned, Glasner's absolute thunder bastard of a strike against Atlanta, just to get the power and the fact that it hit the crossbar not once, not twice, but 3 times. That's how hard he hit it. Like he literally managed to do break physics to manage to get the ball to go boom, boom, boom 3 times. And it was sort of like I remember watching it with so much anxiety. Like, has it crossed the line? Has it crossed the line? Has it? That's crossed the line. It's crossed the line. Like sat there you know what I mean? Like it was probably a good 30, 40. There was a good 3 or 4 seconds before we actually knew whether it was a goal or not. I was sort of it took my breath away for a second. I was like, oh my God, this has actually gone in. And it had sort of you can't strike, you can't teach that. You can't teach a player to strike a ball that nicely. No. And obviously he scored that, won the goal against LAFC, I think it was a couple of seasons beforehand in similar fashion, but that goal was just 10 times better. I personally think if the ball didn't smash against the bar 3 times, I think it perhaps it isn't as, I don't think it's rated hard in the LAFC goal, but I think it's the fact that he's managed to hit the bar 3 times adds to sort of the wonder of the goal and just how exciting it is. And sort of sort of the runner-up, the seconds. Obviously, Quinn's bicycle kick on his first MLS start. You can't ignore it. You can't move away from it. It was just such a fantastic goal to have the balls to do that on your first ever MLS start, and to actually hit the target is sensational. So I think again, we've got a nice pool of goals to choose from. But I think we're all in agreement. It's probably going to be one winner.
How about you, Jose? I actually have a different goal. You'd be surprised. Jose, who's your goal season here?
I do have a different goal, though. Dave, you're not wrong. If that ball doesn't hit the crossbar, I think it burns the back of the net, considering how hard it went. But for me, I think it's a goal and assist of the year, both combined into one play, with Martinez streaking down the right, beating the two players, putting that ball low and hard to Casper, who finishes it so well, something that's so difficult, going towards the near post and pushing it over to the other side of the net, was just an incredible goal. And I think what was so impressive about it, because sure, we can talk about our Norwegian god and his thunderous strike. We can also talk about Sullivan and his bicycle kick, which, again, the balls to do that when you're that age and your very first start. I think you have to pay attention to that goal because of how much of a team effort that was from the offset, from the start of that play to Martinez pushing through and just pushing that across for, again, a Casper that needs as much help as possible in keeping his hot streak going. I think that was my goal of the season, and assists both in one.
That's a great answer there, and I think, one of those moments, as the season was kind of coming to an end, it was really just captivating to what Jose can do on that side of the field when he does advance five to pitch. But for me, this was a goal that I saw in person, was the DC United goal at home. They had countered. I think Mbaizo started the counter. You have a great pass up the field to Garsdag, who just does a perfect touch to Sergio Santos. And I put that goal because of it gave you an idea of what this team could do when firing on all cylinders. It's a counter-attack team who plays from the back, who has great offensive defensive players with Mbaizo, Wagner, Elliot, and Glesnes. I just thought it was a beautiful goal from start to finish. How it began, how it developed, and Sergio put it away with no doubt. So that was one of my favorite goals of the season. Of course, besides the Thor hammer and the Quinn bicycle kick and Paxton's bangers with his left foot. There's so many great goals this year, but for me, that was one that I really enjoyed watching develop from the beginning to the end. And for the assists of the year, I know, Jose, you already mentioned yours with Martinez to Casper, but I'm going to go with the Kai Wagner right-footed pass to Bedoya against NYCFC as my assists of the season. And if you remember in the press conference afterwards, Alejandro Bedoya mentioned how emotional it was for him to score that at that moment because of what he's gone through this season. So I think for me, not only was it a beautiful assist, I think the impact it had on our captain and how important he is to our roster to be playing at a high level, that made it for me my assist of the year. Dave, how about you? Any assists for you that kind of jumps out? And then before we end the show here,
there are definitely a couple of Olivier Mbaizo ones. I think the one against New York Red Bulls, where for Sergio's goal, where he managed to sort of pull it in the one place where Sergio could actually get the ball and put Sergio in the position to head the ball into the back of the net. I thought it was a fantastic cross to have the range and sort of the accuracy to put it where it was. And again, I think a game which we all want to forget is the loss in Orlando with the Olivier sort of like the low fizz like pass / cross towards the edge of the box where obviously the Casper obviously smashes it in first time, and the fact that he's put it in the right position, the area to allow Casper to shoot first time is what made it such a great goal. Which made it such a great assist and great goal. Which again, I think we've been very spoiled for goals that have been scored this year. I think it might have been Corey Burke's goal against Chicago where we won. I think 2-0.
Yeah,
where like just the way the goal was built up to like flicking the ball over, and that was one. I think again that was one of the better goals / assists of the season.
was funny because people, both Eric and Valerie, have mentioned the Glessons shoot, which is now you go to Super Park, anytime Glessons touches the ball, whether it's in the box, our box, or 5 yards away, everybody's calling for him to shoot because of how dangerous he is. And now Jack Elliott's trying to join the free kick bangers club with his fellow center back. But I know this is a long episode for us. We don't typically go an hour and 40 minutes, but I think we had so much to talk about, so much to recap. So much promise moving forward with this now playoff-bound Philadelphia Union squad. And I think we could just talk for another hour about all these great moments we've had this season. But on Sunday at about 3:30, I believe the game is, we go up to the shoebox that is Yankee Stadium to play NYCFC. And whether we finish second, third, or fourth, I think we will expect a good effort from the Union squad moving forward. But before we wrap up the show, Jose, I just want to say thank you very much. I know you and I will be talking again on Twitter. Again, thank you so much for bringing up to join the pod, because I absolutely wanted to have you because I know how devoted you are to this fan base, and you're almost as you're actually longer of a fan than I am in terms of how long you've been following this team. So thank you so much for joining this team. Or for joining this pod, rather.
Cheers, Jose.
Of course, I'm always happy to join. You guys just shoot me a message, let me know when, and I'll hop on. Eager to continue to contribute and consume. So thank you so much for what you both do.
Nice. Thank you very much, obviously, for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Again, thank you so much for watching us and always, listening to us babble on and ramble on about the unions. Obviously, we really appreciate your support and everything you do for you're the reason why we do this. Obviously, it sounds all corny and cheesy to do it, but again, without people like you, Jose, actually watching in, listening to us and watching us speak, we don't really have an audience. We can't really do what we do. So again, thank you so much for everything. And again, we look forward to hopefully having you on soon. Maybe if we can make a deep playoff run, we can get people on to discuss the team and everything. So I mean, that's something we can potentially look forward to.
I'll be in section 140 for that first game, so you guys let me know.
I'll be at the home playoff game. So, Jose, I'll see you at the home playoff game, because I will definitely be there for sure. But anyway, thank you, everybody, for joining the show. Valerie and Eric commenting, great comments. Appreciate it. Next episode will be next week, hopefully, with our second place Philadelphia Union entering the playoffs. But until then, good night, everybody, and
Go Union.
have a good night. Go Union. Doop.
Doop.